evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the Fun Show here at Big TV. We're listening to the dulcet tones of the Battle Hymn of the Republic, played in honor of a great American whose birthday is celebrated, or used to be celebrated, tomorrow.
Yeah.
The anniversary of his birthday is tomorrow, but unfortunately he's been relegated to one of the 44 presidents in President's
Wow.
Day. So enjoy Lincoln's birthday tomorrow and think of Abraham Lincoln, because this is the February 11th version of the Fun Show here at Big TV. Michael Sallin is sitting at the Kara keyboard.
Fumbling around.
I'm Arch O'Reilly, and sitting between us once again is Susan Harrington. And we're happy to be with you, and we're glad you've joined us this evening.
We want to talk about that day that's going to be canceled.
Oh, yes, unfortunately, on the day that somehow has come to mean that all presidents are the same, whether it's Washington and Lincoln and Roosevelt
And
or Millard Fillmore,
Millard
W.
Fillmore.
Bush, and the current occupant, all equal in things. I remember a few years ago that a local automobile dealer advertising his President's Day sale ran a full-page newspaper ad. Remember when they had newspapers? People bought ads in them.
I buy newspapers.
He had a full-page ad, and it had pictures of what at that time was all like 43 presidents in American history. And I looked carefully to see what they did, and they did put Buchanan twice in separate pictures. Yeah. It was Buchanan, right? I haven't misremembered that, right?
Yeah.
Who was president twice, but not consecutively.
Right.
So he gets mentioned twice on things. Well, we have a grand controversy going on at the present moment, particularly in the state of Virginia,
Ooh, boy.
which raises a lot of questions about succession and who succeeds who when things go wrong. Because normally it's a thing, the president walks in front of a bus, like the Secret Service would let you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wish. I like that. That was under your breath. And we've got the vice president, and we've got succession, and we've never gone beyond that.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
We say the Speaker of the House is next in line, and then the Secretary of State, and this kind of stuff. But that's never happened.
All right.
Right? But now you've got a situation where the top three people in succession in the state of Virginia are all in compromising positions at the moment. And two of the three are in compromising positions for something that seemed to be epidemic about 35 years ago in Virginia, and that was going to fraternity parties in blackface. You know?
Very calm. Okay.
You know, it's like you hate these people so much, why do you want to look like them?
Well, but the thing is, you don't necessarily have to hate them.
Well,
You know, I mean, the governor went because he admired the person he was trying to look like.
okay.
You know, he
But the person
he
who's
was a
supposed
big fan of Michael Jackson.
who bleached his skin,
Yes, right.
so he didn't need to. He could have stayed as white as he
It's
is.
called. We used to have an old joke. This is probably politically incorrect now too. When we had man tan, there was a joke. There was another product. It was called Yellow Fella. I'll meet you halfway.
Oh.
As I say, that's probably politically
Yeah.
incorrect now too. But in any case, my question is, where was I the day they passed a law saying that blackface was a crime? And this is not to deny the fact that it's tacky, it's insensitive, it probably says something about you, it's certainly open to be questioned.
Al Jolson became famous.
Yeah, but that was not
blackface.
30 years ago. That was 60, 70, 80.
There was a funny line because there was a person that says, I think it was Saturday Night Live, I guess, where some faux political person was saying, well, what if you're wearing blackface because you're emulating your idol. And they said, well, who's your idol? And he said, Al Jolson.
They did a whole skit where everybody was asking questions, and
Yeah.
the person up front's going, "No, you can't do that. No, you can't do that."
In any case, it's the same question as today. An unsubstantiated, unadjudicated accusation costs you your job. And talk about losing your job, like instantly.
Yeah.
And having no recourse. Bob Costas, who was NBC's ace sports reporter for years, Olympics, Super Bowls, everything else he's done. He was meant to do the Super Bowl as his final thing before retiring.
Right.
And the NFL got wind of the fact that he'd given a speech to a journalism group in which he had commented on the serious concussion problem in the NFL and offered that if he had a 12-year-old athletically gifted son, he wouldn't let him play football. They've gotten 11 brains to study over at BU for CTE, and 10 of them, these are people who were played in the NFL and died, and their families donated their brains to this study. 10 out of the 11 had CTE. But the fact that he mentioned this fact was enough for the NFL to say, you either get rid of him, or probably said, you either get rid of him or we cancel our contract with you. So at least Colin Kaepernick has a fellow victim now.
That's
on
right.
things.
You think they'll ever give him a deal, Kaepernick?
Apparently not.
No.
I mean, almost everybody agrees he's a better quarterback than at least 6 of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah.
There were teams, their quarterbacks got hurt, their backups weren't very good, et cetera, who desperately needed a quarterback. None of them even gave him a call, right? And most of the players say, maybe he wasn't the best quarterback on San Francisco,
But
he's better than 6 starting quarterbacks in the league. He should be playing somewhere. But the other thing you pointed out is that the number of black coaches is declining as well as they go along.
sadly,
And it's all a problem that Roger Go-to-Hell will not address at all.
never.
I mean, that's not what he gets paid. What is it now? $25 million, $50
it's
million?
more than
Oh, I thought it was 40.
Big money. It's
40 million?
I thought it was
40 million, I
thought it was
think.
40.
A
Yeah.
year.
Basically to do nothing,
Yeah.
It's a good job. Anyway, there was a person who wrote an article saying, well, this would be terrible if something happened to Trump and Pence and then a Democrat got to be president. This would be, so we've got to get the Congress out of the line of succession. So we should have like 6 cabinet members in the next 6 positions. What in the world makes you think that Betsy DeVos or Ben Carson would be a better choice for president than the Speaker of the House? The Speaker of the House at least was elected by somebody. There isn't a cabinet secretary there who's ever been elected dog catcher.
Yeah.
I think you forgot one thing. I hate to bring
That's
it back.
entirely possible,
Yeah,
yes.
we were talking about those people in Virginia, and the president, the governor, the lieutenant governor, and
And the
attorney
Secretary of
General.
State.
Oh, I thought it was Attorney General.
Attorney General. I'm
Attorney
sorry.
General
I misspoke.
are all Democrats.
Yes.
Okay, so if they lost out, there's a
Then a
fourth one
Republican would
who's the
come up.
Speaker of the House in Virginia, who happens to be a Republican.
Right. That's the point.
That's, yeah.
The point being that at that point it would flip. They did a poll, though. They did a poll.
Yeah.
How good any poll, who knows? But they did a poll of black voters in
Yeah,
Virginia,
I saw that, yeah.
and 58% said he should stay. Should
Well-
say that was a long time ago,
Yeah.
It was dumb, but he's got a great record. He's doing good things, and he's good for us, and he should stay.
All right.
You know,
Who else you got? I had Dingle. I talked to you about John Dingle.
John Dingle.
There's a man that we could all
John
remember.
Dingle just passed away.
92.
And was it just before the State of the Union? It was, anyway, very recently. The longest-serving congressman
Oh, okay.
in history.
Democrat.
Michigan, I think. Wasn't
Michigan.
It? Michigan. And he wasn't a backbencher. He wasn't a quiet guy. He was a very active
He was a big man
guy.
with a loud voice.
John Dingle. What a name. But yes, that was sort of a loss.
And he stood for things that were important in our country. And well,
At least important to us.
yes, important to us. I don't think
Apparently, what's important today in our country is that billionaires pay less taxes. You
Yeah.
know,
what are you doing? You have anything about the southern border? Anything going on down there?
well, now that you ask, yes, the governor of California has just withdrawn all his National Guard from the southern border. He said
But
the people of California were not going to be involved in this fraudulent charade.
okay.
He probably said charade.
Yeah, okay.
That's okay. Yeah. Well, that's good.
Somehow my English ancestors leap out at me every once in a
Yeah, will the president, will Mr. Trump decide to shut down the government again? That's
in
the
4
question.
days.
Huh?
In 4 days. It's entirely possible. They refuse to take it off the table. Vanity, peevishness, childishness. These are all the things that define this man, you know.
We got a Congress, but what does it do, or what does it stand for, or what?
Well, it's starting to do things now. It's working on getting his tax returns. He's
Good.
They're starting a bunch of investigations. Did you see that guy who's Attorney General at the moment? He was called in and he had a hearing, and they asked him a reasonably hard but not terribly hard question. And did you see his answer?
Repeat.
Mr. Chairman, I see that your 5 minutes are up.
Whitaker.
Mr. Attorney General, you do not run this hearing. I see that your 5 minutes are up. I mean, he was the most arrogant witness in the history of
Yeah, well, he'll be gone soon.
Congress.
Yeah.
Well, as Saturday Night Live said, he's going back to breaking up fights on Jerry Springer.
Okay. All right.
What was the other complaint? He's totally bald, Ray.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
The other complaint was, I'm really concerned about about Bevo's pictures,
Oh, Jeff Bezos?
because every time a picture of me starts to come up on people's screens, they all think it's a pee-pee picture. And they ran the camera down about this far on his head, you know.
That's okay.
Actually, this new guy might actually turn out to be a half decent.
Yeah, Barr.
I mean, because he was actually Attorney General before. You'd like to
Right.
think that he has some legacy and some integrity.
He
Some.
handed in a long piece. Remember, before he even got named by the president, he had a long piece about a lot of these things that are going on in the government, and they misspelled things in it, and it was kind of sad. I read some of it.
You sure Donnie's writers didn't write it for him? Isn't it impressive that a president of the United States can't do a tweet without misspellings and errors? I mean, the education president demonstrating how much he needs one. You know?
Well, what
So-
else?
Maybe if he did him in Russian.
I got.
We going to pull that play out or not?
Yeah, I got it here, but it's going to be a little difficult because it was part 3 of a 4-part play. See, and I have it here. Let's see.
What do they call that when there's 3 parts to something? Trilogy.
A trilogy.
I don't know.
But he said to a 4.
I don't know.
third.
if
Is
I
there a
got
word
enough.
for 4
I know.
series? Quadrilogy?
Maybe.
I have.
Well, while you're looking,
You have 3 copies.
No,
Yeah.
I don't have 3. I have 2.
Okay,
All right.
all right.
That settles
Apparently this evening we are going to spare you
okay.
a presentation from the big Unrehearsed Thespian Society
Yeah.
because we were so entranced by our own conversation in the green room that we forgot to check the play folder.
Right.
What's going on?
Well,
Well, if anybody ever read Flat Stanley,
Black Stanley.
Flat Stanley, you have black on the brain.
I do.
Flat, F-L-A-T, Flat
he
Stanley.
sits in the black of the plane.
Flat Stanley.
I sit in the black of the plane.
Yeah.
The
Wait
illustrator.
a second.
Yeah.
That may be politically incorrect too. Harking back to the back of the bus.
Oh, now I'm really in
We
trouble.
have to be in
okay.
trouble.
All right.
Okay, Flat Stanley.
Flat
I
Stanley.
know nothing about
Yes.
Flat. Oh, wait a second. You wanted to honor an illustrator.
Right, well, the illustrator of Flat Stanley, Tommy Unger, he was 83
Wow.
or 86. He passed away this last week.
Okay.
But a local illustrator and Mass College of Art graduate and on staff at Mass College of Art, Equa Holmes, she just won last month, so I guess maybe it's not just, she won
It's just
the
enough.
Coretta Scott King Award for illustration for Marion Dane Bauer's book, The Stuff of Stars.
Now, must we assume because it's named after Coretta that it's for black artists or black subjects or just
Yes.
broadly? No.
In some cases, it's maybe the topic might be, and then in some cases it might be the illustrator,
Okay.
or the
All right.
or the author.
So an illustrator could do a story about, my mother's recovering from cancer and it would qualify, or a white illustrator could do a story about
But Wilma Rudolph.
Wilma, whatever.
Yeah.
Take Wilma.
Yeah.
As a matter of
I
fact,
believe so.
I read a story today, and I wish I remembered the name, but it was, I get little random things for Black History Month on my thing. And there was a gentleman, and I've forgotten his name, unfortunately. Something like Ben Ross or some simple name. He was a slave. I think in North Carolina, his master sent him to town to work. He had to send his wages back. But he worked, and he worked near the seacoast, and he worked with shipping crews and stuff. So he got to know a bunch of the sailors. He got to know a lot about navigation and one thing and another. Eventually, he ends up navigating the ships. Comes the Civil War. He's so useful that they put him on a ship as the navigator of the ship. And the ship is staffed mainly by slaves with a white officer crew. He ingratiates himself with the crew. He shows them that he's, very loyal and everything else. One night, the entire white officer corps goes ashore to have dinner. He takes the boat. He sails out around the point where all the crew's families are waiting, loads them on the ship. He's watched the captain enough that he can imitate the captain's hand signals at the watchtowers, sails out. By the time they know their ship is gone, it's out. It is approached by a Union flotilla. He runs up a white flag. He surrenders.
And,
Bump, bump, bump. He ends up eventually in command of the Union ship in the Civil War. He is so good, they make him a full captain in the thing. And to make a long and wonderful story short, he eventually ends up buying the plantation that he grew up on and was one of the first black men elected to the U.S. Congress.
And you can't remember his name?
I can't remember his name.
Well, email me if you
watch
remember
is
it.
close, though.
I'll email you the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll email you the story. But it's a great story. He outfoxed him.
Yeah.
He did the whole thing. And then he was so good they made him a captain.
Yeah.
There weren't too many black captains in
No.
the Civil War.
I would say not. Yeah.
I have another thing that I'd like to speak to you folks about on things. You probably don't give a lot of thought as to how Brookline Interactive Group and your public access television is financed. In the early days of cable television, the community's contracts with the cable vendor, whether it's Time Warner or Comcast or Cablevision, etc., was that part of their deal is they had to provide the money to run an access studio and some training and things like that, which is the way we ran for a long time. But that is rapidly slipping away these days, and the vast bulk of that money has disappeared. So you may be asked, or worse yet, you may not be asked, but if you're watching this means you're aware that there's something called access television, and I ask you to consider making a donation to Brookline Interactive Group to, in part, fill the hole that this lack of community-enforced support is leaving, and to keep big in business. And we might possibly be the tip of the iceberg because we're here almost every week.
Yes.
But there's an awful lot of training and an awful lot of learning and a lot of people coming in here and doing, computer graphics
I would like to
and things.
volunteer my salary. I'll start
From
it
this
now.
show?
From this show.
Oh, well, then you don't need to.
Well, they ought to pay for a lot of stuff. Okay.
Anyway, they do very good work, and it's good for community members and seniors and things. And you can become a member even if you have no intention of coming in here and doing a show. And if you're asked, or even if you're not, please consider supporting Brookline Interactive Group.
Okay.
Michael would support it more if it was still called BATV.
BAT. I would support it readily if it was BAT. But the man who changed the name, I have nothing but scorn for.
Okay, but he's long gone. Let's point that out.
All right. Do you know that the New York Times had an former executive editor named Jill Abramson?
Okay.
Jill
of
or
the New
Gil?
York Times. For 3 years she served.
Oh, she.
And then she.
Okay.
And then they fired her. Oh, they terminated her or whatever. They removed her.
Is there a difference?
I know.
No, anyways, she wrote a book. And the book is about some of this. And
Ah,
it
now I
turns
start
out
to understand.
that they accuse her of plagiarism. That
Plagiarizing part of her book.
of other things, yeah.
Okay.
Other papers and other people's writings, and she says that it's all unintentional, and she will fix all of this up, and there's nothing to worry about. So
In other words, she'll make a new edition giving proper attribution to her stuff.
to the people who deserve it.
Well, I know nothing about her, but I have a tendency to be a little sympathetic because if you're an executive editor, you read so much unpublished material,
Right.
and you probably read 12 articles a day or something like that. And these things, they kind of go in, and you don't always remember where you read them.
Yeah, I'll give her that. I'll agree with you on
You
that.
know.
Yeah.
So if somebody said, yeah, actually I read that, but by the time I was writing this book, I thought it was my idea because
Yeah.
it'd been running around in my head so long.
Okay.
And I can understand
Yeah.
how that can
All right.
happen. Of course, I wouldn't be as understanding if it was my stuff that
Okay.
she was doing.
Well, you want to talk about Woody Allen with his troubles?
Well, he's suing Jeff Bezos, right?
It's a funny roundabout, right?
Yeah, he's-
Woody Allen suing Bezos.
Yeah,
Bezos
Bezos
is suing the Inquirer.
Yeah.
Pretty soon the Inquirer will be suing Woody Allen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Woody says they promised to pay. They made a contract, he says, to pay for 4 films.
To produce 4 films, yeah.
But then once he was accused of harassing or
But wasn't that 25 years ago?
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
but the courts, I agree with you
Our
about
courts
that.
aren't that slow, are they?
I know.
well,
I mean, because he's married.
Well, anyways, he's that's their defense.
In other words-
A big part of it.
In other words, he's been trying to get him to come across with the money for the last 25
amazing.
years or something.
And the cost he's suing them for is $68 million.
And as somebody said, those are rather modest films. One quarter of 68 million is a modest budget for a film
Yeah.
these days.
That's right.
So he,
But there again, he's always made low budget films.
yeah.
They say also the lawyers for Bezos or whatever his name is, from Amazon, that
Yes, Bezos.
that the actors who work, the male actors in his films, are people who have been involved with these sexual charges also. A lot of the male actors
In Woody Allen's films?
in his movies. And you have to go, that's something that the lawyers talked about in their charges.
I'm
So
trying to
we
think
have
of
to
who's in
wait
his
and
movie.
see what they'll bring up in court because, well, like, Bezos is not going to go broke paying off $68 million, but
It's
there's
so funny they'd bring that up since Bezos himself stands accused.
yes. Well, there you are. You know about these things too, the two of us. And then there's the federal bankruptcy judge.
What would possess
What?
any male human being to take a picture of his junk and
Send it.
email it or Instagram
Yeah.
it or something to put it in the electronic world where people should realize nothing is private?
No.
There was a
I mean, I
Congress-
wouldn't put it in an envelope.
I know.
We had that crazy congressman from Brooklyn, don't you remember, who
Yeah.
did the same stuff?
Yeah.
Remember?
Oh, it begins with an S. That one?
Yeah.
And he ran
yeah.
for mayor in between
Yeah.
his
Yeah,
things.
and he had a chance at winning but he kept doing the same things again.
Right.
You know, and so they said the
We've,
hell with
we've
him.
forgotten his name, but his name was sort of unfortunately appropriate to
Yeah,
the
Yeah.
judges.
I think it was. It began with S.
Anyway,
I'll think of it.
you're right, but I mean,
Yeah.
that's an illness. You know.
Yeah, that's what they said.
Anyway,
Well, this guy, Lampert, who lives here in our area, the North Shore, used to. Actually, the guy that I worked with in the schools in Boston, this Lampert was his cousin, I think. It's the same one.
okay, have no idea who.
Yeah,
Lampert
well,
is.
anyways, this guy is in trouble with a federal judge. The federal judge, a bankruptcy judge, approved Edward Lampert's plan to buy all of Sears Roebuck.
Oh, okay, good.
What's left? They make fun of him in the papers. They think he's a cartoon character. The judge drained.
I don't think the employees who might be able to keep
Wait,
their job think
Wait,
he's a
that's
cartoon
what
character.
that's what's coming. Judge Drain, Drain, implored Lampert
As
to
in
make
bound up.
make a fresh start, and particularly do some good things for the workers of Sears Roebuck, which I thought was great. I think that's a judge that's trying to do something right in a bankruptcy.
That was what he was proposing. So why are people making fun of him?
Well, he's been in and out with this whole business, trying to take it over and not take it over, and cut back on the unions people in Sears Roebuck. A lot of crazy stories about all of this. They make fun of him. Anyways, the judge said, "I don't care about the stuff that
I'd
you."
miss Sears Roebuck, although, on the other hand, I keep wondering, where are they going to sell Craftsman tools now? Because I really don't care much about the rest of Sears,
Yeah.
but I
you like
need my
Craftsman
Craftsman
shoes.
tools.
I miss the catalog,
I like.
Yeah.
and the wish
I
book.
like the catalog.
The wish book at Christmas time.
Oh, yes. It was
Okay.
so much better. I don't think, well, maybe they can. Maybe kids get on the internet now and use it as a wish book.
Yeah.
But you remember when we'd sit around
Yeah,
with our
oh.
siblings and
We didn't
pour
even
through
say
the
anything
thing.
about Kelly Conway.
Kellyanne Conway?
Yeah, we didn't say anything about her. She's a terrific person in the White
She
House.
claims that she was assaulted. And what I point
peanut.
out is in the middle of in the middle of abusing the entire nation of Mexico, she thought it appropriate to take her family and go to a Mexican restaurant.
Right. I ate it. Rini and I ate in that
This is like a
restaurant
guy
with
in
Bruce.
full SS gear going into Rubens for dinner. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good night,
This is a fun show. We will not be back next week, but we will return in 2 weeks. And we hope to see you then.